Greetings and salutations, fellow humans. Today is the 9th of October, 2024, and I am Thaddeus Satori. Today I'd like to share with you a few ideas about coping with a broken heart, to share a few things that I've done in the past that have helped me through. The reason I've decided to talk about this was due to a recent encounter I had. I was on a flight from Laos to Thailand, and I was seated next to a young Chinese man. He was 24 years old and 1 year out of university. In spite of his tender years, he had already experienced a great deal of pain and loss and even his own mortality, and he seemed to be coping quite well with all of it. Much to my surprise, he was quite knowledgeable about Taoism and Tai Chi and Buddhism and yoga. So we had quite an open conversation about these Eastern philosophies. As our conversation progressed, he showed me a photo of his girlfriend, and he said that she had recently spoken to him about the possibility of breaking up. My reaction was, well, that's okay. And I was pleasantly surprised when he said, yeah, that is okay. So I could see that he was actually incorporating some of these philosophies into his existence in helping him cope with life. Before I begin with some of the coping mechanisms that I've used, I'd like to share with you a personal story that I think is relevant. When I was in my late teens and early 20s, I desperately wanted a girlfriend, and as a result, I managed to scare any potential girlfriend off. I suppose I was giving off that sort of vibe. After several years of being single, I grew so frustrated and exasperated, I finally threw my hands in the air and thought, my God, I just don't care anymore. And after that, I became attractive. Turns out that insecurity and neediness are not attractive qualities. So now let's get on with coping with broken hearts. The first thing I'd like to say is directed mostly towards young people, but not necessarily exclusively to them. But this idea of, oh my God, I can't live without that person. Well, I would say tell yourself a different story. Simply do the math. Write down your age, down to the month if need be, and subtract from that the amount of time you were with that person, and that will give you the total of the time in your life spent without that person. You've already run that experiment, and you know that you can indeed live without that person because you have done so for a much longer time than you were with them. So just tell yourself a different story. Change the can't to can. I can live without this person because I've done it. Another thing that has helped me get through periods of broken heart has been crying. I know that in many cultures, crying is considered to be a sign of weakness, and I was fortunate enough to not have grown up that way. I've often thought of crying and laughing as opposite sides of the same coin. Both are necessary to a healthy and happy life. Both activities seem to be great stress relievers and cathartic and cleansing and healing. So I would recommend, if you feel the need to cry, just to let the pressure off, then do so. Personally, I have used sad songs to get the tears flowing. During one breakup, it was the case in which we were both in love with each other still, but we just were not very good together. In that case, I often listened to Nothing Compares to You, sung by Sinead O'Connor. In another breakup, it was the case that I wanted her and she didn't want me. The song that got the tears flowing for me that time was I Can't Make You Love Me If You Don't, sung by Bonnie Raitt. Now the next line to that song is, You can't make your heart feel something it won't. We should all know that we can't make ourselves feel something. Either we feel it or we don't. There's no real forcing it. And certainly we have no control over others, so we can't force them to feel something they don't. In a case like this, you simply have to accept the reality of it and get on with life. There's no reason to be angry or to feel like you've somehow been done wrong. The person simply doesn't feel the same way about you that you feel about that person. And there's no changing that. So accept it and let it go. Another thing I've found worthwhile to keep in mind is crucialness of timing. Timing is critical in life. You could meet the right person, but it's the wrong time. Years ago, I had a girlfriend who checked all the boxes on the makings of a perfect spouse, and yet I was still in my 20s and I simply wasn't ready to settle down. So it may well have been the right person, but the wrong time. It's important to also bear in mind that you're not going to marry everyone you date. It simply wouldn't be possible. I tend to look at how to do relationships as like learning how to do anything. You need practice, whether it's a musical instrument or another language or some skill. You got to practice and practice. So after every relationship that you've been in, you should be better at relationships. For me, it's important to critique the things I did right and the things I did wrong. If you're wise, you get rid of the things you did wrong and keep the things you did right and add to them, if you approach it honestly and open-mindedly. Finally, I would like to leave you with the Serenity Prayer. I say it often to myself, though I have changed the first 3 words to I will seek and find, but feel free to use it in its original form, and it goes like this. Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So these are some of the thoughts I have on coping with a broken heart. I hope that if you are in that situation, that some of these things I've shared might help you get through it. Always bear in mind that this too shall pass. You won't always be sad or depressed. And if you approach life consciously and aware and self-critical, I think you can come out the other side being a much better person. That's all for now. Thanks for listening.